So let's say that you've done all your reconnaissance, you've come up with a pretty plausible scenario. Now you're going to have to use your scenario and go in for the attack. So you've got into a building. What do you do when you're in there? So the most fun is to plug in your laptop and own the network. But more often than not, when I'm asked to do a social engineering attack, it's just a proof of concept. So although they allow me to plug into their network, sometimes all I have to do is get a screenshot of the IP address to prove that I have been on the network, and that's it, unfortunately. When you're in the building and your attack has been successful, you can look for trophies if you've agreed that in advance. So I like to go straight to the photocopiers or the fax machines and see what people have been printing, and I often find good documentation there or in people's inboxes. Sometimes you're not allowed to take documentation off site, so I might just take a photo rather than actually taking people's documentation away. Some social engineers prefer to leave a calling card or to leave some evidence to show that they've been in there. So they might leave a little sticker saying, I was in here on such and such a date. I had one colleague who liked to leave a Beano comic book in there to prove she'd been in there. And I think the big advantage of bringing a comic book is that if you're waiting around, you have something good to read. I like to bring in my mobile phone so that I can take photos. I pretend to send a text message, but really I'm taking photos of network points or offices or wherever I've managed to plug in from. So there's lots of things you can do once you've got physical access to your building. Maybe you can let some more colleagues in, wait until the office is shut, and then open it up so more of your colleagues can come in later on. But it's important to have an exit strategy and know how you're going to get out of the office as well. So, for example, sometimes I arrange to have a meeting with people. I make up some excuse to have a meeting. So I get into the office, and then when I'm on my way out, I may excuse myself, say, look, I'm just popping into the ladies on the way out, so thanks for meeting with me. I'll see myself out. And, of course, I run amok in the building and try and get some network access. So you've done your social engineering attack. Next thing, you have to write the report. Boring. You tell the story of what you've done. It's a really good report once you can throw in some photos. People really like the reports. And they're pretty similar to a pen test report in that you talk about your methodology, the actual attacks you've done, the weaknesses that you've found, and recommendations on how to fix them. But what's very important in reporting is not naming individuals. I never name individuals in my report. I like to see social engineering, when it's successful, as a failure of processes or procedures rather than blaming it on any one individual. And sometimes it's pretty easy to guess who the individual was, but I still really try and emphasize that it's been a failure of processes and procedures. The individual wasn't educated enough, and they should have known about social engineering. So a few tips that I've learned throughout the years. I use a false name, but I do like to use my own first name, and that's so when people talk to me, I actually realise they're talking to me and turn around and acknowledge them. For the same reason, I like to use a similar sounding surname to my own. People often say to me, well, Sharon, you're a woman, of course you're going to get in anywhere. And yeah, sure, it does help. There's certain scenarios, like I can play a cleaner, or I can really play the damsel in distress and ask people to help me out. It does help, but all the social engineers I know who are guys are equally successful, so we haven't yet reached that level in society where it matters if the social engineer is male or female, I think. When you're social engineering, you can flirt and use flattery. If you can make people like you, they drop their guards and they give you access, like Carlos Hector Flamenbaum. He worked for a year to make the staff like him. They dropped their security guards and he got away with all the diamonds. Sometimes I like to offer an incentive, and I don't mean bribing people. I would never bribe people during a social engineer, because once somebody has accepted a bribe, they're pretty much compromised already. People don't like to have staff within an organisation who accept bribes, so I'll not do that during a social engineer. But what I will do is as I mentioned earlier, maybe call up, say I'm doing a survey, and everybody who enters gets put in a draw to win some kind of prize, a PlayStation or a holiday or something like that. And if all else fails, just go and work for the organisation that you're targeting. So unfortunately, I've never had the time to get a job within an organisation, but once I did go for an interview, and they brought me into the organisation, and I was able to own them from the inside on the back of the interview. So I think 2 of my secrets of success are understanding the balance of power within a social engineering attack. So a social engineering attack is about people. There's 2 people involved, the social engineer and their target. And there's a balance of power between the social engineer and their target. So sometimes the social engineer will go in and play someone very authoritative and intimidate information out of their target. Now that doesn't tend to work for me, because I don't really look so much like a bully, or I don't necessarily look like somebody who can play a really authoritative role like a CEO. On the other hand, I play a really good damsel in distress, I play a really good employee in the job, or maybe somebody who's a little bit more submissive, a little bit more shy, and people give me information. But it's important not to go too far. So if you're really trying to play an important role and intimidate information out of people, don't make them so scared of you that they dislike you so much that they won't release any information. At the same time, if you're playing a more submissive role, don't be a complete pushover. You do want to get to the information in the end. And my second point, time travel, is all about how to be an effective liar. So I've heard that some people have real problems lying. Now this comes as quite a surprise to me. So what I like to do when I'm trying to think of my role that I'm going to use to get into an organisation is to pick a role that I have some experience of. So for example, I've been a graduate, I've been a temporary worker, I got a temp job as a secretary when I was younger, so I know what it's like to play these roles. It makes it a little bit easier when people throw random questions at you to think back to your own experience and be able to answer the questions. So before I finish up, I'm going to talk about a social engineering attack that I did in London. I was asked to social engineer an organisation, physical social engineer, so the aim was to get inside the organisation and plug into the network from there. So I went along to do my physical recon of this organisation, and I thought, no way. I looked inside reception, there was about 7 receptionists there. There were 2 or 3 security guards, and they were so security conscious that they even had one of those machines that they use for seeing if you got metal on you, that they use for scanning bags in airports. So I thought, oh my God, what am I going to do? There was no chance of getting into a smoker's entrance because the building was surrounded on 3 sides by water. So short of, rowing out to the back of the building and trying to scale it from the back, I just did not know what I was going to do. So I looked on this company's website. I spent ages trying to come up with an idea. And eventually I found that they had a graduate section. They were trying to recruit graduates into their graduate scheme. And they had 2 case studies from some recent graduates who had joined, saying how much they enjoyed the job, etc. So I got the names of both these graduates, and coming up with an email address is not difficult. It's like firstname.lastname@organisation.com or whatever it may be. So I gave it a couple of attempts, got the email address, and sent it to the 2 graduates, Alice and Bob. So Alice was out of the office at the time. I didn't get a response from her. I did get a response from Bob, but first of all, here's the email that I sent to Bob. So, hi Bob, I hope you don't mind me emailing you. And I go on to say what I'm looking for. I'm a graduate studying, I'm a final year student studying computer science, linguistics and French at Trinity College Dublin. And that's an example of time travel, or trying to play a role that you've experience of, because a few years ago, although I prefer not to say how many, I was a student of computer science, linguistics and French at Trinity College Dublin. So I go on to explain that I'm studying IT, but I'd be really interested in joining their business program. I'm a little bit worried about joining a business program with my background, and am I going to fit in? So I'm trying to play this damsel in distress and suck up to this graduate